Hello, this is Jason Busch, the founder and CEO of Spend Matters. Today, I'm joined by Todd Schlekeway, President and CEO of NATE, the Communications Infrastructure Contractors Association. Todd, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate being a guest on your show and look forward to our conversation today.
My first question is if you could just tell the audience, what is NATE?
You bet, Jason. So NATE is a national trade association. We represent over 1,015 member companies located in all 50 states. Our core membership are the contractor firms who deploy all the wireless and communications infrastructure. So everything from the building and maintenance of cell towers to rooftop deployments, water tank wireless deployments, small cell deployments in right-of-ways, broadcast work, and then in-building wireless systems in airport shopping malls. So basically, if there's a antenna providing connectivity, there's a pretty good chance that a NATE member company was involved with that deployment. So yeah, we have a lot going on, very dynamic industry.
There's obviously been a tremendous amount happening in telecom in recent years, even as an amateur looking at the sector with all the various rollouts and such. But I'm curious to get your view as to what will be different in 2022 versus 2021 for telecom.
Yeah. First of all, Jason, it's been a wild ride. I mean, our industry really has been at the forefront during the entire COVID pandemic. I mean, we were designated very early on as essential service providers. So believe it or not, we as a trade association, we grew our membership during COVID, and the industry has never really slowed down. If you look forward, if I had my crystal ball for 2022, what's going to be different is there's going to be more scaling of the 5G deployment cycle. Right now, I would characterize the 5G deployment cycle as being in the early innings of a 9-inning baseball game. We're going to see some significant progress in 2022 when it comes to 5G deployment. First and foremost, your listeners may be familiar with spectrum. So spectrum are these valuable airwaves that the industry needs to enable connectivity. And so what we've seen over the last several years is the wireless carriers, the AT&Ts, the Verizons, the T-Mobiles, now Dish is a new entrant in the marketplace, investing heavily in spectrum auctions at the FCC to acquire more spectrum, and specifically really valuable for 5G is the mid-band spectrum. And so what you're going to see in 2022 is kind of the first activation of using C-band spectrum in these networks. And of course, it's NATE members who kind of transform these airwaves into connectivity by flipping on and activating the networks. So the spectrum that's been acquired that's very valuable is going to be put to use in 2022. We're going to see that. And so that's going to play a big role in this scaling of 5G that I alluded to. Another driver, Jason, would be you're seeing more CapEx. If you talk to all the industry analysts, they're projecting that the capital expenditures from the major customers in the industry and the major customers for the contractors whom we represent are really the carriers, the tower owner, vertical realtors, those type of companies. And all signs indicate that the CapEx numbers are going to be higher in 22 than they were in 21, which bodes well for network enhancements and upgrades. Another factor would be Dish is going to be a fourth facilities-based carrier, national carrier. So we now are back to 4 carriers. You may recall that T-Mobile got approval to acquire Sprint. And as a result of that, that created this void temporarily. And now we're going to have 4 carriers again. And Dish is actually looking to activate its first 5G network in the first quarter of 2022 in Las Vegas, Nevada. So that's exciting news. And really another driver that I'd like to mention is this generational type of funding investment that was recently passed as part of the infrastructure law that was signed by President Biden. Specifically for our industry, what that means, Jason, is $65 billion for broadband was included in that infrastructure package. 42.5 billion of that 65 billion is going to go to the NTIA and ultimately make its way to each state. And so we're talking about an infusion of generational type investment going into our industry and later in 2022, hopefully. So that's a major change over previous years when it comes to the infusion of money. So all of that really kind of bodes well for 2022 when you're looking at the big picture in the wireless and telecom sector.
A lot of activity at once, and this is all happening under the specter of the supply chain disruptions we've seen impact just about every industry. So I'm curious to get your take as to how all the supply chain issues are impacting telecom and these rollouts and the expected spending as well.
Yeah, and I know that you, Jason, have really tracked supply chain challenges closely. And as you can imagine, in our industry, where on any given wireless site, there could be a carrier involved, a tower owner involved, a general contractor involved, multiple subcontractor companies involved. We are a very layered industry. You can imagine the profound impact that some of the supply chain bottlenecks have had on our industry. And, I've got some good anecdotal information from our members that I'll share with you here. And it definitely has had a major impact. Let's talk about steel for a second. I mean, steel for manufacturing the towers is currently up sharply, and the lead times for delivery have almost doubled. One member told me the 2-inch galvanized antenna pipe a year ago was $3.89 a foot. Today it's $7.01 a foot. So, that's a doubling of the price there. Fiber has been in the news a lot. AT&T came out earlier this year and talked about the challenges the supply chain was having when it came to access to fiber. Some of the makes and models of the fiber optic cabling, Jason, have long lead times, and it's forcing some of these companies to revert to more expensive alternatives. And fiber is essential in any wireless network, any wireless site for backhaul, for connectivity. So that's been a major challenge. Electrical, the wire prices have been all over the place. A year ago, 2-inch electrical wire, 88 cents a foot. Today it's $1.80 a foot. 2-inch PVC, 1 year ago, $5.61 each. Today it's $24.26 each. And, that's just a few pricing examples when it comes to electrical wire and electrical, which is very important in the small cell work going on that is vital for 5G. A lot of our members, obviously, the contractors rely on commercial motor vehicles and trucks, their crews. It's their second home almost. And I had a member in the northeast part of the country, Jason, recently tell me that they typically buy 10 to 12 commercial trucks a year that they outfit for their crews. This year, they've been only able to get 4 because of the bottleneck and the shortage. A lot of the heavy equipment, the directional boring and drilling equipment that fiber companies are using to lay fiber in right-of-ways, there's long lead times for that. Prices have outpaced inflation. And then the concrete prices, concrete's very vital towards our industry and pouring foundations for towers. Prices are up 30%. And, obviously the delivery of the concrete is delayed often. And so those would be just some tangible examples. Everybody knows the impact the fuel prices have had across every sector. But those are some anecdotal stories I have heard personally from members throughout the country, Jason, that will kind of paint a picture for you on its impact specifically on our industry.
Those statistics on commodity price inflation as examples are just amazing. Someone had told me that a year ago. I would have put on my Joker face. I don't know what to say.
As you can imagine in my seat, when you have, members in all 50 states who are working across state lines and working regionally, I hear all kinds of stories on a weekly basis on the challenges. And so I feel like I'm in a good position to articulate some of these challenges because I hear about them so frequently.
I'm curious, and I know you began to preview it, but if we take it down one level, how some of these issues are impacting NATE members specifically. So if we look at, pricing pressures throughout the workforce and what large clients of the contractors and subs at the other end of the supply chain, the T-Mobiles and AT&Ts are doing, how these kind of collective activities and challenges impact your members?
That's a great question, Jason, kind of a loaded question. I will tell you that Nate felt the need to start a public relations campaign on the topic of some of the pricing pressures that are really imposed by some of the major customers in the industry, and that's the wireless carriers and the tower owners. Many of these companies have gone to, Jason, a matrix pricing model. So their vendors and contractors, it's kind of take it or leave it pricing. And a lot of those prices haven't kept up, obviously, with inflation, number one, but the cost of doing business and the cost of those services, deployment services, if you're a contractor company. So we have, in a very professional manner, we have articulated that, look, some of these self-inflicted pricing models that are imposed by our industry's top customers are impacting workforce safety, workforce retention, the ability for these companies to retain workers in some cases, the company sustainability. Most of our members, Jason, are between 15 employees and 50 employees. So we're talking really small businesses. So the very sustainability of some of these companies could be at stake. And then there's always a direct correlation between the quality of the contractor and what you invest in and the end product, and that's the quality of the network, the wireless network. So we have pointed out these challenges, and it's something that, based on whom we represent, and that's small business contractor firms in the United States as our core membership, that we have had to highlight, because against this backdrop of all the other pressures we talked about, the supply chain pressures, inflationary challenges, our industry has created some of these issues by imposing these matrix pricing models.
If we take this down to, the individual contractor level, obviously your industry is, largely occupied from a workforce perspective with highly skilled workers. Labor has been the big question besides the broader supply chain issues throughout COVID and now as we enter the endemic phase. So I'm curious how the skilled worker shortage is impacting the market overall.
Great question, Jason. And I can tell you that outside of worker safety, workforce development is our top priority at NATE. We hired a workforce consultant several years ago to write a strategic plan for us, and we're currently in the second year of implementing that plan. We commissioned a survey of just our members, and our members alone, this doesn't even represent the whole industry, just our membership umbrella, Jason, told us that there's a need for 14,693 more workers. Over 70% of that number would be needed field workers and tower techs. And so the need is profound. And of course, we're no different than any of the other construction trades whom we're also competing with for workers who also have shortages. So it is challenging. I mean, we are having some success right now implementing new programs at the community college and technical school level. We just received great news from the state of Ohio. They're going to have 3 programs at 3 different community colleges, and they're going to use our tower technician curriculum that Nate developed. And those programs are going to launch in the spring of 2022. So those are the type of things we're working on. We've got to get more programs in those traditional educational pathways to raise awareness that, look, there are great jobs in this industry. There's a need, number one, but there's great jobs and there's a career ladder. There's a career pathway. A lot of these men and women who are tower techs, start as tower techs, and they get to go to a foreman, project management. Some of the owners of these small businesses that are NATE members started as tower techs. So there's a career ladder and a career path there. And that's the story we're trying to tell in a much bigger and bolder fashion. I always say I wish it happened overnight, Jason. I wish I could wave a magic wand, but unfortunately has not helped. So we have a methodical workforce development plan that we're trying to implement, and we're making headway. It's just going to take a little more time. One other thing we're doing, just because our strategic plan highlighted that the industry needs to do a much better job with promotion and outreach and awareness of those career opportunities. So we're actually in the process of developing a feature-length movie. It's called Vertical Freedom, and it follows 6 tower techs from different parts of the country, from different diverse backgrounds. It follows them all over the country as they're doing this work, and it highlights their professional and personal lives. That is going to debut, this documentary movie, in February of 2022 in Las Vegas. And so we're hoping to get that to the major streaming platforms, and we're hoping that that'll play a role in creating more awareness for the opportunities in our industry. And again, why are we doing all this? Why are we making all these investments? It's simply because the shortage is so profound and the need is there that we have to tell that story and bang that drum loud.
Absolutely fascinating. What I find even more interesting on the industry is if you look at, starting salary for a number of college graduates, it probably doesn't even begin to approach what someone can make with a year or two of experience, let alone owning a small business in this market. So it sounds like a great career path for a large portion of the population to pursue.
It really is. I mean, there's men and women who start, and then a year or two, depending on the company and the region of the country they're in, Jason, they're in the 6 figures. So there's opportunity. The travel, you have to be willing to travel. And sometimes the work at elevation are the 2 boxes that, a candidate can check every box, but they have to be able to travel some and work at heights. And those tend to be some barriers to entry that some industries probably don't have.
Well, thank you so much, Todd. I really enjoyed learning more about NATE, the industry you serve, and its members. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. Really appreciate you devoting time to discuss our industry and what you do, covering relevant issues across different sectors on your podcast. Thank you.